Of course, like any other city council, state legislature, or even government entity that is challenging or simply asking what the issue is at hand, the situation and problem need to be defined. What exactly is the issue that we are dealing with, and how does it affect our community? Well, New Hampshire's climate is drastically changing. There's no doubt about it. Most of the state, primarily situated around industrial areas or even the seacoast, have warmed 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit on annual within the last century. Throughout New England, spring is arriving much earlier and bringing more precipitation, while the summertime seems to be getting hotter and much more humid. Even though we have seen earlier seasons, we tend to have heavy snowstorms occur in the middle of March or even April, which are obviously spring seasons. Not only have we seen warmer conditions, but sea level is also rising. With the influx in rainstorms, the water in the oceans, lakes, rivers, and ponds have caused damage to personal property and areas around them, causing soil to become infertile. With the climate change being even more drastic on a global scale, the coming decades will more than likely see an even higher increase in temperature, increase in flood, harm to ecosystems, and potentially an increase of danger to human health. Now you may ask, for an individual who is advocating about climate change and solutions that may potentially decrease the risk of such an environmental issue on our local government, what do my members of my family think, and what do those within our community say about this issue? Since this does seem like it is more so a national issue rather than a local issue. Well, the topic of climate change has been very controversial over the past few months. With our new president in place and the Republican Party calling for looser regulations on environmental protection, our nation has essentially neglected the true effect of such a mass problem. Personally, my family is very aware of the problem we are facing when it comes to our climate. The winter time has seemed to lag on while the sunny days of June, July, and August have dwindled, as most are spent indoors due to the increase in storms or even the drastically high temperatures, which we had seen this past summer had caused a massive drought. Well, how does this issue affect households and local residents? If we're talking about a national issue and how it could potentially affect not only the world but our own nation, how are we sure that the local governments will also see negative consequences? Well, the issue of climate change doesn't necessarily affect households and local residents, but rather the general population, because it increases the health risks associated with toxins, especially when there is a decrease in ozone protection and an influx in harmful chemicals. As I had previously stated, with the Industrial Revolution taking place over 100 years ago, there has obviously been a mass influx of corporations and also firms that have decided to dispose of waste, especially harmful toxins, within our waters, only polluting our water and causing it to be unsafe not only to drink, despite the fact that we have a very good irrigation system and water cleaning system. It still is very dangerous for aquatic animals, and also it can potentially destroy the natural resources for other firms, and local residents within our local government. How does this issue affect area businesses? Similarly, this issue does not necessarily affect businesses, but rather may provide more jobs or economic stability for those living in New Hampshire. With the increase in climate change becoming apparent, there has been an increase in the amount of businesses, firms, organizations that have begun to deal with the changes in environment. As I had previously stated, the following businesses that are remaining or had previously been established prior to this influx in awareness for climate change, they obviously had neglected any form of environmental regulations that had been established under previous presidencies. With President Obama coming into office, he had obviously imposed stricter laws and regulations under the EPA in order to submerge any type of threat not only to human health, but also to the health of vegetation and our loving animals who have seen a rise in extinction. However, with our new president, Donald Trump, he has obviously imposed multiple executive orders that have diminished the effect of such regulations and laws, allowing for businesses and firms to essentially neglect our planet and participate in such harsh activities that only increase the rate of climatic change, not only on a national scale or state scale, but could also potentially harm our local environment as well. Well, how does this issue affect our government at the local, state, and federal levels? The issue affects our overall government on a mass spectrum due to the constant controversy around such an issue. When President Trump came into office, one of the first executive orders he had signed had related to environmental policy and the whole issue with the Dakota Access Pipeline and Keystone Pipeline. With such a political division in Congress, this issue has been constantly brought up but mostly shut down. Most Republicans have deemed climate change as merely a myth and are pushing for more leniency while trying to increase the number of businesses and productional efforts of American corporations and firms. Since the federal government is at such an upheaval due to this issue, the state governments have been revising their own laws on environment. More liberal states tend to favor the previously established regulations under President Obama, whereas conservative states tend to push for other issues. And of course, if such an issue is affecting our local, our state, and our federal government, it has to be affecting our global market as well. Well, this issue definitely affects the rest of the world on a huge level. Currently, the sea level around the world has risen to the point where some towns are almost wiped off the planet. In other places, such as the North and South Pole, increases in water level and temperatures have caused animals like polar bears and sea lions to barely survive the cruel conditions, causing the life expectancy of many species to significantly drop, as well as efforts in irrigational systems and vegetation to also drop, causing not only a diminishing effect within vegetative states, but also for animals living within these areas as food is scarce. Finally, how does the issue affect resources, goods, and services, as well as finances? Obviously, since we are talking about economics and how this is going to affect our economy potentially, we want to talk about how it could potentially affect our resources. Well, this issue primarily does affect resources, goods, and services because of the deficit we have seen in natural resources, and in contrast, the effort we have seen on a global spectrum to save the animals from mass extinction. Environment-friendly nations and corporations that deal with environmental issues tend to recycle resources and make an effort to establish the same mindset across the globe, which has been seen through things like an increase in recycling and the production of bio-friendly products. So, basically, with this increase in production of such materials and products, we have seen an increased rate in production for these resources rather than using our scarce resources that we have tried to mine, extract, etc.